Hello everyone and welcome to Avantika Designeering Series or ADS as we like to call it. Every week on Wednesday, we feature design and technology leaders who share their professional journey, their thoughts on their domain of work, and designeering where the world of design and engineering meet. Make sure you follow us on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter. And with that, let's continue with your show.
Human-centered design is essentially a subject that has evolved over the years so that we can make the environment we live in compatible with us. Now, why is there always a need for adjusting such compatibility? It is probably because humans are in a constant state of evolution, which makes them to want to still go a step ahead and make everything human-centered. A successful human-centered design process is a very far-reaching subject that required vigorous training. In this episode, we interact with Narendra Ghate, Head of Research, User Experience and Service Design at Tata Elxsi. He was one of the founding members of the Design Business Unit. With more than 26 years of experience, Narendra holds his expertise in consumer products, B2B products, and automotive products. His projects are based on various platforms like mobile responsive, TV, cars, appliances, augmented reality, immersive, and computers. To understand more about his journey and experiences, let's get into a conversation with him on re-engineering design and unturn another stone in our journey of discovering designeering. Hello, Narendra. Welcome to Avantika Designeering Series. It's an honor to host you on our show.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Great. So, Narendra, as an icebreaker, usually, especially in the recent years, leaders don't associate themselves with one company for such a long time. What keeps you going on being in the same organization for nearly 2.5 decades?
Well, that's a good question, and it's sometimes that I think about also myself. But I think you have to be partly lucky and partly have a certain mindset to sort of be happy and be where you are for such long. So in my case, so I'm a designer, and what excites me is ability to do different types of projects. And Tata Elxsi as a company is like a design agency, which means we tend to work on very varied kinds of projects. So I've worked from everything from trains to cutlery sets, from branding to movies, uh, from digital to mock-ups or physical mock-ups. So been a range, and it's I've been traveling all over the world. So it has intellectually kept me satisfied, kept me fairly happy. So that way, there has not been any reason to move because the challenges have always been there. And otherwise, the company itself is good. It is professional. It is humane in terms of there's no politics, no need of any unnecessary the kind of equations that make people want to leave. And my own mindset has not been of a greedy, ambitious person. I mean, I'm fairly satisfied with what I have, and I don't always keep craving for something more. So it's these combinations that have sort of allowed me to be where I am, and yeah, I mean that way I'm still here and I'm still satisfied, and it's going good.
Super. It's very unusual to come across people who stick to an organization for such a long time and have such positive vibes about their companies that they are also associated with. So, Narendra, from being an engineer to a designer, from creating products to user experience today, can you run us through your professional journey? How have all of these things worked for you?
It's a good question. I'll try and I've not answered it in this particular fashion before, so I'll try and gather my thoughts around it and sort of say what I feel. I've always been a sort of a physical, or I like physical things. I like to know how things work, how things look, and right from my childhood, I've been making models. I've been doing mechano sets and doing some craft and painting. So it is. I've always been that kind of a person growing up. So engineering was quite natural, especially mechanical engineering, which is what I did, and I really liked doing that. And so after my 12th, when I did get into NDA, which is your National Defense Academy. So I was supposed to be a pilot, but as fate would have it, I ended up being going to an engineering college and did my mechanical engineering, which like I said, I was quite happy doing it. And that college itself was fairly stimulating. I mean, I was a cultural secretary. We used to do a lot of fests and a lot of competitions. And my first job was as a mechanical engineer in a company called Merck Electronics, which is the company that makes Onida TVs. So Onida as a brand was fairly well known. Even now, I guess people know it. So I was the mechanical designer. I would be designing the cabinets, the plastic cabinets of TVs. So that was something that I did for a year. I didn't really know much about IDC, IIT Bombay, or about design as such, because we're talking about 1994. But somebody told me that there is this entrance exam. Why don't you give it? And during that time, everybody was either doing an MBA or studying to go abroad. Doing their GRE. And I somehow was not completely satisfied with both these options. And I always felt that I should do something third. And though I did give my GRE, got good enough marks to go, but then I had also given this exam called SEED, which is your common entrance exam for design in IDC. And it was a completely unprepared attempt. And my thinking was that it's a prestigious institute. There are only 15 seats. So if I'm good enough, I guess I will know, or I'll get good marks, or I'll get inducted. And that's what happened. I mean, I just gave that exam, and I must have aced it because I came second. So then I thought, oh, maybe this is what I'm meant to do. So then I naturally sort of stopped my job and shifted to IIT for my postgraduate. And that was in product design. And so that was 2 years in IDC, and that was the best 2 years of my life, because it is really fulfilling in terms of the kind of thinking that you have to do, the kind of work that you have to do, the kind of hard work that you end up putting in. And for those 2 years, I never remember sleeping before, let's say, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the night. And it was always all of us in our department, doing various projects, helping each other, learning from the seniors. There are 14 staff for a 15 student or 16 student class. So it was very high intensity in terms of one-on-one education from professors. So I really learned a lot there. One of the big projects that helped me was a sponsored project that Professor Ravi Puvaya had brought in. So this was a US company, and the project was to design something, basically design a human-computer interface that can create humor. And there were various products and ideas that we had created, and me and my team, so three of us, we had done this project, which was then selected to be represented in the US. So right after I graduated, or even before that, I traveled to the US to present this along with the professor. And again, our project was among the best over there, amongst 8 projects that were selected across the world. And this was, like I said, right, this was 96. And so that was the first time I really got into something called as UX, or something called as human computer interface, or understanding what this entire field is. And coincidentally, I had also got through campus recruitment in Tata Elxsi. And like I said, I liked the job. Even now I like the job, and I was quite willing to explore there. And so I came back from the US. It was a 1 month long stint, and then I joined the company and decided to explore. So initially in this company, I was what is called as an alias operator. So alias is a software that is used to create surfaces for cars and for products. And essentially my job was to show how the software can be used for design. And as a part of that, I used to go to Bajaj, go to Tata Motors, go to Philips, and sort of teach them or show them how software can be used for industrial design. And that was the first 1 or 2 years in Tata Elxsi. And then as a part of that, the entire design agency within Elxsi started. So I was among the first designers and the first members of this design team or design department that started. And again, in the initial years, we used to do a lot of projects abroad. So I was sent to the US, I was sent to Japan, I was sent to China, I was in Germany. So everywhere I would have spent 6 to 8 months. So almost the first 5, 6 years was traveling all over the world. And that again opened my eyes, that I thought made me much more fine tuned as a designer, much more open to see how design is practiced across the world. And so when I came back finally in and sort of settled in Bangalore, which is the headquarters, we started doing more and more projects. Of course, the team had also grown by then. And then this thing kept on going. We added new sort of domains within our design department. Earlier, we were doing mostly transportation design, which is what I started off with. But then we were doing product design. We added retail, branding. We had an animation division that started in Mumbai. So a lot of these sort of kept on going. And then last few years, of course, UX is something that was started by a friend of mine called Satish. And all of that has been growing. So to me, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a transition from, let's say, product design or mechanical to user experience or digital. I think we are in a stage now where design has to be looked at holistically. I personally feel it's wrong to have too deep a division between design domains and saying that a graphic designer will not think about physical objects and a UX designer should not worry about, let's say, branding graphics. All of it needs to come together, because that's how end user experiences and product experiences are created. So the designer who is designing should be able to design from all points of view, and which is what is happening now for me in Elxsi, and that's why it's still going on. So that's the kind of a quick journey. It was not a planned journey, it just happened to be in terms of what the industry and the time demanded.
Hey, do you know Tata Elxsi has won the IF Design Award, a world-renowned award for design excellence. Tata Elxsi won this award for its innovative and exceptional design concept for mixed reality-based smart assistive wearable devices. These devices have been designed by the company to help people with special needs such as autism or Alzheimer's to deal with social situations which they might otherwise find difficult. Wow, interesting. Now, how do you change your mind and skill sets from a product designer to being a user experience designer? Both are two dramatically different worlds. So how did you change all of this? Did you have to learn new things? Did you have to change certain skill sets? How did this happen?
So I would sort of push back against you in this assumption that both of them are too different and you really cannot be one if you want to be the other. I think being a good designer is about empathy, and I know it's a very often or misused word, but ability to understand what the end consumer wants and what will work is deeply important for a design and a designer to succeed. So now if you're trying to solve a problem, and if you feel that this problem can be solved by a physical product, then you'll automatically start thinking and create a good product that will solve the need. If you feel that the problem can be solved by a digital experience, then it will help you, or you can easily make a good UX or a digital product. So you have to look at it still from a point of view of what is needed rather than what tools do I have. I mean, as they say in one of the sayings, that if you have a hammer in your hand, you will start looking out for nails, and that cannot be the approach for designers. Designers should be confident about all the tools that he has in his kitty, but not really go around walking or showing off one and then only trying to attempt to solve the world through that set of tools. And you'd be surprised how easy it is for a product designer to think in terms of UX if he's open-minded enough. You have to be able to separate the skills and the tools needed from the thinking that is needed to solve a problem, because skills keep changing, the tools keep changing, and it's relatively easy to learn some 3D software or some kind of a 2D prototyping system if you're doing a product design or if you're doing a UX. But you cannot be a slave to the tool. You have to push the tool to what you want, change the tool if you need to, or get somebody else to use the tool for you and tell them that this is what I want, and not let go till they get you what you want. So if you keep looking at it in terms of how can I do, then you restrict the profession and the areas that you can step in. If you look at it in terms of what is needed, then it will not restrict you, and you will not label yourself as a product designer or as a particular designer. I mean, just to add on this, we have a very senior professor called Professor Nadkarni, who in one of his talks had given this nice analogy that earlier used to have these doctors which were like a family doctor or a GP, and you go to him and he would look at you as a person, as a holistic thing, right, from your mind to whether it's a family thing or whether your hand is paining or whether your head is paining or whether your stomach is upset. He will look at you for what you are and be able to sort of give you a correct medicine, and then if required sort of pass you on to a specialist. Nowadays you don't have this family doctor who looks at you as a whole person. You have to first think whether your hand is paining or your stomach is paining, and then go to a specialist or a bone doctor or something else. And that is what is happening in design nowadays, that you are very quickly thinking of a specialization within design rather than looking at the problem holistically. And that I think is wrong. It reduces the ability of designers to make a difference. And I think I'm lucky to have sort of not been sucked into anything now, any one particular domain.
Interesting. That's very beautifully explained. In fact, you earlier mentioned, Narendra, of having received the opportunity to travel globally. The question that I have is, what is your design process? And while you had this opportunity to learn from people from different economies in terms of shaping your design process, how has it worked for you?
I'm going to again push back on this notion of design process. Yes, of course, especially when you're young, when you're learning, a process will help you guide your thoughts, process will help you know what to do next. But once you declare yourself to be a good designer, or at least once you become a confident designer, you should not again be slave to the tool or the process that you use. To sort of answer your question, there are many different processes, and many new processes can be created on the fly based on the project that is needed. But if you first determine that, okay, I'm going to have this 5-step process and that's how I'm going to execute this project, then sometimes you may not do justice. So what I learned, let's say when I was abroad, that the processes were used mostly to sort of help the design process, but they would always be abandoned if it was not helping. So let me give you an example. We have this very rigid process of doing research first, and then doing concepts, and then doing detailing, and then all of that, which is fine. Of course, that's the way it makes sense. But sometimes we might have to do the creative conceptual process first, so that we can generate empathy about the problem in our own mind, and then we go out and do the research and really feel what is it that the market is talking about. Now, because we've already done some thinking in terms of solutions, we are able to quickly realize or at least be able to understand some of the nuances that people are talking about when we are doing research, and that allows us to come back and do concepts much more faster, better. Now, this, I'm not recommending this as the standard process everywhere, but there will be projects where we have to turn this around or do some things differently. So to answer your question again simply, processes are there, but again, we should not let them rule us. In fact, I have this thing that I keep saying, which is not exactly popular, but I think it's right. I feel that good processes hide bad designers. What I mean by that is, if you have this very beautifully created templated process, especially in the UX design, and you're creating an app, or it doesn't matter who's creating the app or who's doing the design, you're always going to get a good end result. The issue with that is, whether you're a good designer or a not so good designer, you're still going to get a good product, which on its own is definitely good. But when you have 5,000 people doing the same thing, you're going to get 5,000 similar products, or because they've gone through the same project or same process. And that then starts diluting this entire system. And that's why you find apps and webs, they all look so similar to each other because they've all gone through this rigid process, and there is this blind mandate of, oh, this is what is good and this is what is bad, and they are just followed without thinking too much about questioning what is good and what is bad, and then everything looks similar. So what I'm saying and what I learned abroad is you have to have confidence in your own instincts. You have to be able to judge the work that you've done and know whether it is good or bad without having to use the crutches of a process. I've taken interviews of students, and I've met so many students who will show me this project, and they will defend it saying that, see, I've done all this process, all these steps have been done well, and that's why my end result is good. And sometimes it's not good, but they are not able to see it because they feel that they have applied the formula, so the answer has to be right. So that was my small bit on the process part.
In fact, moving from your journey to certain work that you've done at Tata Elxsi. So while developing Park My Memory, Tata Elxsi's new smart parking solution that you created for parking slot detection, assisting Indian drivers to save time and make it convenient for them. What was interesting is that your team blended machine learning, automation, data collection, and design to arrive at this solution. The question that I have is, how were you able to bring all these different backgrounds together and build a common solution?
So let me answer this question more in terms of many projects that we do in Tata Elxsi rather than just this particular solution. And the advantage of Tata Elxsi is, though we are about 500 people in design, about 200 creative designers, so which makes us a very large design agency, but we have about 6,000 software engineers, and these are these are not IT guys. These are pure product engineers, software engineers that are doing fairly high level work. So for example, India's mission to Mars had components and software designed by some of Tata Elxsi engineers. So it's that kind of work that happens. Now the advantage of living in a company where more than half of people, or 90% of people, are software engineers of this type, is that as a designer you can start walking the talk, meaning I can start imagining products or imagining end results or solutions, and then getting the engineers to be excited and to tell me whether it will work and how it will come together. So my job as a designer is to visualize the end result, visualize the end benefit for the end consumer in terms of proper user journey or detailed use case, and really clearly lay out, this is what the feature of the product would have to be, this is how it will come together, this is what is the data that I need, and this is the pattern that we need to find from them. So once you have a very clear understanding of the end result or end goal, it becomes easier for the engineering team to sort of work towards that and sort of create solutions, whether it is machine learning or something else. And that's what we've been doing in Elxsi quite often, where we lay out this, whether it's a mock-up or a simulation or a simple design document of the end result. This allows the customers also to know clearly what is going to come his way, and also allows all our engineers to also know what has to be done. And then it is a pure execution process of splitting the work into various components and doing a project management of all the aspect of it. So that's what's been happening across many projects, not just this. And that, I think, is again one unique thing about Tata Elxsi, and maybe one of the additional reasons why I'm still here.
In fact, Tata Elxsi has done varied kind of projects: industrial, consumer-related, service-based. On the other side of the spectrum, there are specific skills-oriented and vertical-focused design. The question that I have is, how do you build the team with varied skill sets to offer solution to all sorts of customers?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it's important for a company like ours and a design agency like ours. So we are not a product company, so which means if all of us take leave, the company is not going to earn any money. So we are a services company. That means we have to continuously keep doing projects, doing work. Now, what happens is the market is very dynamic, so we cannot really predict what kind of projects will come our way. So sometimes we have to design airports and airport experiences, and sometimes we have to design hospital experiences, or sometimes we have to design, let's say, something that will go on a digital screen, or some kind of app or a car or whatever, right? So though there are certain specialized people that need to be attached to specific projects, majority of the people and majority of the need of our kind of business is ability for people to do different kinds of projects, and people who are very happy to take new challenges, people who get bored when they're given the same type of project again. And that automatically creates this great system for us, where the skills that we have in our people and the ability that we have in our designers is the ability to learn new things, try new things, look at everything with fresh challenge and a lot of energy, and not really be worried about uh, the different aspects that it come in. And that's why what we look at when we are either hiring or when we are developing people is an ability of a person to be very horizontal in terms of skills and thinking and industries, but also an ability to learn things fast, so that if a new product has to be created or he has to work on some new area, he's able to apply not just his profession, which is design, but also apply domain knowledge that is needed. And that is slightly tricky, but it is something that I think we have done fairly successfully well. I'll sort of elaborate slightly more so that you understand the problem of our industry. I'm a consultant. Tata Elxsi will come across as an expert to our customers to solve their problem, right? So I might be designing, let's say, a food delivery app. Now the point is, I've never designed a food delivery app before. So then how do I come across as an expert if I've never done it before, right? And that's what happens for almost every other project, where I have to be the expert for things that I've not done before. And that can only happen if I'm really confident of design as a profession that I can apply to that project, and my ability to learn enough about the domain to really make that difference. And that's what we sort of inculcate within our people, and that's what we
Hey, do you know Tata Elxsi has announced the opening of Global Engineering Center (GEC) with Schaeffler Technologies AG and Co. The GEC Center in Pune will focus on mechatronics, digital and embedded technologies with the highest level of talent in line with Schaeffler's vision of driving mobility for tomorrow. Interesting. I'm sure that it would be a very exciting experience to bring people with different skill sets, different thought processes together, and actually solve these interesting customer problems. Moving from your journey, Tata Elxsi, to the world of design, and one of my first questions there is: user experience design is a broad term and a part of service design, which is cross industrial. Do you think our ecosystem is now maturing to see the granularity and change the broad description of user experience designer to specific roles like product designer, for example?
So it's a bit complex question, but let me answer it in my way. So UXD or UX designer is now a fairly mature profession, and at least the industry, especially India and with the software industry, almost every product without it having a good UX designer, every software product, you cannot really enter the market. So you have to have a designer who has looked at it, not just in terms of look and feel, but also the overall navigation, the ease of use, the flow, the understanding of consumer, all of that. And that has really allowed this boom in the demand for UX designers. So that is one part. Service design, on the other hand, is completely different. Service design is far more mature abroad. In India, yet people don't want to pay for reports. They don't want to pay for somebody who's designing a process for them. They would like to pay for tangible things. And so that is a bit lacking in India when it comes to service design, because service design essentially would mean creating multiple interactions for a particular delivery of an experience, and that templatized, let's say, behavior, or that templatized interactions that we have designed becomes a service that is offered. So for example, if I'm designing a restaurant experience now with this new COVID situation, I will understand what is it that a customer wants, what is it that the business can offer, and really lay out the process of how should the customer be greeted, how should he be seated, what kind of menu he should have, how we can have a non-touch system, how can he give him confidence that the food is going to be infection free. I will think of all of that, and essentially, but what I'm in the end delivering is telling them how to do this, and which means it is still just a report. And in India, people are yet not fully, let's say, matured, at least the industry, in terms of valuing this kind of report. Though not all industries are at the same level. So, for example, airlines and certain other industries, service design is given a much more sort of important. At least they understand what is it that a service product is. But everywhere else, it is still catching up. So, service design and UX currently are quite different. But yes, the thinking that is needed for a good UX project is what has to be applied in service design. It's just that it won't be restricted to a screen. It will be across time, across different touch points.
Well said. And in fact, we see that in terms of demand, this high demand for user experience designers, keeps increasing. And I see the industry, as the design industry in India is maturing up, this clarity among the industry folks setting in. So, another question from the world of design. We can do impressive imagery. It's time to fill it with a sense of humanity and address deeper issues. How can we make this happen?
Yeah, in fact, this is another important part that design as a profession should do. I mean, some of it is already happening. See, if you realize how the world has sort of grown over the last many decades, the physical needs are being satisfied easier, and the psychological needs are now more prominent and more difficult to satisfy. Now, design as a profession essentially works on behavior, works on thinking what will make somebody happy, thinking on predicting how they will react or how they'll behave to a particular stimulus. I mean, that's what. So, in a way, we are very similar to economics. So, economists will give incentives through various let's say monetary tools to predict or change behavior. We designers look at touch points, look at other various aspects of. It could be a tone of voice, it could be a song, it could be how a color looks, it could be how an environment looks. So we design elements that will change behavior or that will predict certain responses. And that aspect is something now more and more important because, like I said, your physical needs are getting satisfied much more easily. It's become a commodity to get a product in your hand, right? And that's why our ability to create happiness or create satisfaction or create certain well-being amongst people is now the correct time, is the correct profession, and it's quite important.
In fact, the world of design, as we keep saying, is maturing. A lot of new elements are being introduced. In fact, when we look at it from the academics perspective as well, new courses, new electives, which are very granular in nature, which are very specific, are being also introduced and addressing these challenges. So, moving to my next question, service design or design thinking is often linked with terms such as innovation, process, change, and improvement. How can service design thinking be integrated into organization as a means of change?
One of the things that design and then service design does is it always looks at people in terms of as consumers or as users or as customers or somebody that has to be pleased, somebody who has to be thought about, somebody whose problems have to be understood so that you can create a solution. So that is the approach of design, and the subset of service design essentially is designing processes or designing steps that will create that kind of a solution or that kind of a expectation, satisfaction, right? Now that when you apply within organizations, it becomes a huge mindset change. So for example, you take a company, take human resources, take HR department. Now if they start thinking in terms of what should the new joining experience be for my new employee. Now if they start applying service design thinking to that induction process, then they'll start looking at it in terms of what is the new joinee feeling like, what is it that I want to inculcate in him, how should I excite him, how should I make him a great employee, how should I, while doing that, tell him about the culture that we have, how should I give him tangible aspects so that he's proud of the new company that he joins. So moment you start thinking in terms of what this new employee should feel like and what do you want him to be, then the entire approach of let's say induction of a new person into a company changes. Earlier the HR would typically look at from their point of view, or from the point of view of what would be their requirements from finance or anybody else. So they will have this list of tick marks saying, okay, we have to open a bank account for him, we have to get an email, I have to tell him to go through his documents, he has to sign these things, I have to assign a manager to him. So they used to look at it from their own perspective, that I have to finish these tasks to get this job done with. That of course results in a job done with, but the experience not being said that great for the employee who is newly joined. So moment you change the attitude and start looking at it in terms of service design experience for your for your problem that you're trying to solve, you can make a huge change without too much of a investment in the organization, and that can change the way organizations feel, the way they work, and this can be applied to everything, whether it is sales process, internal finances, so many things.
Hey, do you know Tata Elxsi in association with TAL locally designed and manufactured the country's first industrial robot, the Bravo. The robot is developed for micro, small and medium enterprises, also known as MSMEs, that require cost-effective robotic solutions for their manufacturing purposes. It can increase productivity up to 30%. In fact, from there, coming to another interesting world, which is the world of technology. Designing for virtual reality represents new challenges to a user experience designer, because good virtual reality prioritizes presence over simplicity and function. The question that I have is, how can we design for presence?
Yeah, so it's again the labels that I'm worried about. That virtual reality is slightly hyped. That in certain areas it is definitely required. In certain areas it will not work. So if you understand why you're using a VR headset as a solution for an experience, then that is half of your problem solved, right? So for example, we are trying to create, let's say, a tourist application. We're trying to show a person a place before he goes there, or let's say we are trying to create this experience where the person looks at his flat through VR before he buys it. Now moment it is clear that there is an opportunity to make a big difference for the need that is there and the platform or the technology that we're talking about, then the solution will be much more easier and faster and can definitely make a difference. In many other cases, VR is applied wrongly, and then whatever you do in terms of design, it is going to be just a sort of a fancy, like they say, a small sort of a 2-day, 2-minute kind of excitement. After that, it's going to die away. The thing about design, if you look at product design, if you look at UX, if you look at any other, the reason why this entire profession is called industrial design is because it is meant for mass consumption, mass production, which means I'm creating a product that is going to be sustainable and used many, many times and used by many, many people. So now if I apply that to VR, I have to create a solution that should be useful and required across many people for many, many years, ideally, right? And then hence anything that we do that feels like a short-term glamorous thing is not going to be a good solution, though you might create a good graphical experience or good immersive experience. The product may not solve the problem. So once you have that clear in your mind, you will remove a lot of these fringe sort of flashy things that people talk about or that you see, and then you'll start making it actually something that can be used without too much of a stress, that can be used again. I mean, if you just ask around and if you ask a person how many times have they gone to a VR experience for the second time, they would have gone through many VR experiences through whatever wherever they have come across, but rarely will you find somebody who's gone to the same experience or same product two, three, four times, right? And that means there is something wrong. So that's the danger that is there. And but if you think about it clearly in terms of what is it that it is there for and why you are doing it, then the solution will be much more easy and clearer, right? So whether it's a navigation, whether it's the quality of graphics that is inside, how does a person feel when he's having a headset and everybody is watching him fall apart and not stand straight? Is he going to feel conscious? Where is the environment where is he going to get this headset experience? So all of that has to come together for it to really work.
Wow, I think really well said, Narendra, because I was, all this while thinking that yes, after the first experience of VR that I have taken, I have never gone back to another one. Interesting. So that brings me to my last question for our show, Narendra. You've taken a blended approach at your work, where we've spoken about blending design, technology, a lot of other fields that you've done at Tata Elxsi. At Avantika University, we take a blended approach in our teaching methodology. Do you think it's a relevant philosophy of blending two worlds? For example, at Avantika, we call it designeering, where we blend design and engineering. Do you think it's relevant?
Oh, absolutely. So let me look at it from my point of view, or from the way I would sort of describe it. Design is the horizontal part, right? Like I keep saying that you should be able to look across various industries, various aspects. But when you come across a problem and when you are looking at it in any sort of horizontal point that I just now spoke about, you need to be able to dig deep and come across as a expert, or at least have enough domain knowledge to be able to solve it, right? So while this horizontal thinking easily comes through design, the vertical thinking happens through engineering, because I will be using engineering to train my mind to think vertically, train my mind to think systematically, train my mind to think analytically. And then yes, I might apply that engineering thinking mindset for mechanical design or computer science or whatever. But the core way of thinking is vertical. And if you have a blended approach where a person is taught to think vertically when needed, but having an ability to think horizontally uh, when needed, that becomes a unique and a very important way to create a great designer who is not who is very confident of getting into any field, because he knows if needed he can dig deep, think vertically, and be able to solve all downstream problems and not worry about it, or not get fooled by some plastic engineer somewhere who says that this cannot be done, because he will tell you how to do it because he can think like that. So this vertical thinking and horizontal thinking blend that comes with design and engineering is a great way to bring together in an education institute. I mean, I was lucky that it happened through happenstance for me. I was a good mechanical engineer, like I said, and then I went into design, and that has helped me. And if you are doing that kind of blended approach in Avantika University, then I think it's a great insight that you have, and it will create great designers and great students from your university.
Super. It was interesting recording this podcast with you, Narendra. Thank you for validating what we are doing at Avantika University, sharing the candid approach, the way you multitask, the way you've evolved. So many interesting pushbacks, and telling me that some of these thought processes, or the way we probably think about it or question them itself, needs to evolve. It was lovely interacting with you. It was a supremely candid conversation. And thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
Oh yeah, I love talking design, so yeah, anytime is most welcome.
Hey there, we hope you enjoyed our show. Do write to us on ads@avantika.edu.in. We look forward to your opinions, feedbacks, and suggestions of speakers you would like us to host on this show. Do tune in our channel next week on Wednesday for a new story on Hubhopper or wherever you get your podcast from. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.